The moment he stepped between her and the man shouting in the restaurant, every conversation stopped. Plates froze midair. A chair scraped back. Her hands trembled around a glass she hadn't touched. She stared at the stranger who wasn't really a stranger at all, wondering how he'd ended up here, and why her heart was suddenly racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. Before we go any further, if stories about everyday people showing unexpected kindness move you the way they move us, take a second to subscribe to Kindness Tales. Like this video if it pulls you in, and let us know in the comments what moments touched you most. Now let me tell you how this night came to be. He was a single dad, long before anyone at work really noticed him. The kind of man who showed up early, left exactly on time, and never joined happy hour. Not because he didn't want friends, but because daycare late fees were brutal, and his son's bedtime stories mattered more than office bonding. His life ran on calendars taped to the fridge, grocery lists folded in his pocket, and the soft weight of responsibility that never fully left his shoulders. Mornings started before sunrise in a small suburban apartment, where toys lined the couch and a tiny pair of sneakers sat by the door. He packed lunches, tied shoelaces, and practiced spelling words while coffee brewed in the background. By the time he dropped his son off at school, he had already lived a full day emotionally, even though his workday was just beginning. At the office, he was reliable, quiet, the guy you trusted with deadlines, but didn't know much about. He worked under a boss who was sharp, composed, and always seemed a step ahead of everyone else. She ran meetings with confidence, dressed impeccably, and carried herself like someone who had learned early not to rely on anyone else. Most people saw her as intimidating. He saw her as fair. She noticed him too, though she didn't fully understand why at first. Maybe it was the way he listened without interrupting, or how he never took credit that wasn't his. Maybe it was the small kindnesses, like fixing the jammed printer before anyone complained, or staying late once to help a co-worker even though it meant rushing through dinner with his son. He never made a show of it. He just did what needed to be done. Their conversations were brief at first, work-focused, then slowly they stretched. A comment about her long hours, a quick smile when she mentioned a failed attempt at cooking. One afternoon she overheard him on the phone in the hallway, his voice soft and patient, explaining homework to his son. When he hung up and noticed her there, he looked embarrassed, like he'd revealed too much. She surprised herself by smiling and asking how old his kid was. From then on, something shifted. She found herself lingering at his desk with questions that didn't strictly need answers. He noticed she looked tired sometimes, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. Still, neither crossed a line. Work was work, life was complicated. Her personal life, though, felt increasingly empty. She had tried dating, but it always felt like an interview. Men either competed with her success or resented it. When a friend insisted she give one more setup a chance, she agreed out of exhaustion more than hope. The date was at a trendy restaurant downtown, the kind with low lighting and overpriced appetizers. That evening, the single dad was doing what he did every night. Dinner, dishes, a story about a brave little astronaut, then tucking his son into bed. As he cleaned up, his phone buzzed with a notification from a neighborhood parenting app. Someone nearby had posted about a late-night emergency babysitting request. He scrolled past it, then paused. The address looked familiar. It was near the restaurant, where his office sometimes held events. He didn't think much of it, until he checked his work email out of habit and saw an automated calendar reminder. His boss was out that evening. Business dinner, it said. He almost laughed at himself for connecting dots that didn't matter. He shut off the lights and settled onto the couch, planning to fall asleep there in case his son woke up. Across town, the date was unraveling fast. The man across from her had started charming, then slowly shifted. Complaints about his ex turned into digs about her job. Jokes became sharp. When she tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, he waved it off, ordering another drink she didn't want. The final straw came when he leaned back and said loudly that women like her were the reason men felt emasculated. Heat rushed to her face. She stood, intending to leave quietly, but he grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to cause pain, but enough to make a point. That's when his voice rose, drawing attention, and that's when fear crept in. Back in the apartment, the single dad's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from an unknown number. It was short and shaky, asking if he was nearby and could help. The address was the restaurant. For a second, he hesitated. His son was asleep. He wasn't supposed to leave. But something in the message felt wrong in a way he couldn't ignore. He called the number. She answered on the first ring, trying to keep her voice steady. She didn't explain everything, just said she needed someone she trusted. He didn't ask questions. He threw on a jacket, left a note for his neighbor, and drove. When he walked into the restaurant, the tension was thick. He spotted her immediately, standing rigid beside the table. The man was still talking, still loud. Without thinking, he stepped forward and placed himself between them. His body calm but firm. He spoke evenly, asking if everything was okay. His eyes never leaving the man's face. The shouting stopped. The man scoffed, muttered something under his breath, and finally backed away, embarrassed by the sudden attention. A manager appeared. The situation dissolved as quickly as it had flared. She was shaking now, the adrenaline catching up to her. He offered his jacket without a word. Outside, the night air felt cooler, cleaner. She thanked him, her voice breaking despite herself. He shrugged it off, saying anyone would have done the same, though they both knew that wasn't true. They sat on a bench for a moment, the city humming around them. She apologized for dragging him into her mess. He told her it wasn't a mess, just life being messy sometimes. She laughed softly at that, wiping her eyes. That night didn't turn into anything dramatic. He drove her home. They talked about safe topics, work deadlines, her dog, his son's obsession with space. When he dropped her off, she hesitated, then said quietly that she didn't know how to thank him. He told her she already had by trusting him. In the weeks that followed, something changed between them, though nothing was said. She noticed how he always checked his phone at certain times, making sure his son was okay. He noticed how she made an effort to leave the office earlier some days, reclaiming parts of her life she'd ignored. Kindness had a way of opening doors without forcing them. One afternoon, she asked if he'd like to join her and her dog for a walk after work. He almost said no out of habit, then remembered he was allowed to say yes sometimes. His son came along, chattering happily as they strolled through the park. She watched the two of them together, the way he listened, the way his son trusted him completely. Something warm settled in her chest. She didn't realize when she'd fallen in love with him. Maybe it was already there, growing quietly through shared coffee breaks and honest conversations. Maybe it started the night he showed up without hesitation. All she knew was that kindness had changed the shape of her life. He remained unaware for a long time. He thought of her as his boss, then as his friend. He didn't see himself as someone people fell in love with. He was just doing his best one day at a time. But kindness has a way of revealing truths when the moment is right, and when it does, it feels less like a surprise and more like something that was always meant to be seen. What started as a simple act of stepping in became the foundation for something deeper, something built on trust, respect, and the quiet understanding that showing up matters. Long after the memory of that bad date faded, the impact of that night remained, woven into everyday moments that felt a little brighter. Kindness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it looks like answering a late-night call, or standing between someone and their fear. Sometimes it changes two lives at once, without either person realizing it at first. And if this story leaves you thinking about a moment when someone showed up for you, or when you had the chance to show up for someone else, hold on to that feeling. Share it, pass it on. Tell us in the comments about a kindness that changed your life, because you never know how far one small brave act can reach.